Dr. Zilrath's appendages trembled as she reviewed the neural scans for the third time that cycle. The human specimen, Subject 7 they called him, though he insisted his name was Marcus, sat calmly in the observation chamber, reading one of the primitive paper books his species inexplicably cherished. The readings must be corrupted, her assistant Veclon muttered, his chromatic scales flickering between confusion blue and alarm orange. No sentient mind operates like this, but Zilrath knew better. The Galactic Concordance had tasked her research facility with understanding humanity before their formal integration into the cosmic community. 6 months of study had yielded nothing but escalating concern. The humans were dangerous, not because of their technology or their weapons, but because of what churned inside their skulls. "Run the nightmare simulation again," Zilrath commanded, though her 3 hearts hammered in protest. They had tested 17 species with the nightmare inducer. Each one experienced paralysis, mental shutdown, or temporary catatonia, when exposed to their deepest fears made manifest through neural stimulation. It was a standard psychological assessment tool, considered harmless because subjects always understood on some level that the experience wasn't real. Marcus had laughed. The human's brain activity during the simulation had been chaotic, yes, but interwoven with the terror signals were spikes of excitement, curiosity, even pleasure. When they extracted him from the apparatus, he'd been grinning. "That was incredible," he'd said. "Like a horror movie inside my head. Can we go again?" Horror movie. The translation matrix struggled with the concept. Entertainment derived from fear. What kind of species deliberately frightened themselves for recreation? Zilrath's investigation into human culture had opened an abyss. They told each other ghost stories around fires. They created elaborate fictional scenarios designed purely to trigger their own stress responses. They paid currency to be frightened in darkened theaters. Their children played games that simulated death and danger. But that was merely the surface anomaly. "Begin the moral paradox sequence," Zilrath ordered, her voice barely steady. This test had broken lesser minds. It presented impossible ethical dilemmas designed to force cognitive dissonance, severe enough to map the boundaries of a species' moral framework. Most species locked into a single philosophical position and maintained it rigidly. Marcus's neural patterns exploded into contradictory fractals. The human held 2 opposing viewpoints simultaneously, believed both that individual life was sacred and that sacrifice for the greater good was necessary. He understood that killing was wrong while accepting that sometimes it wasn't. His mind didn't resolve the paradox. It weaponized it, used the tension as fuel for something the translation matrix could only render as nuanced thinking. "Impossible," Veclon whispered. He should be catatonic. Instead, Marcus was discussing the problem with enthusiasm, exploring angles that hadn't even been programmed into the simulation. The human mind didn't seek consistency. It thrived in contradiction. Zilrath's scales had gone pale white, the color of existential dread. She initiated the final protocol, knowing it would likely end her career. The survival calculation. They placed Marcus in a scenario where his continued existence threatened his family unit. Every species had some version of the self-preservation instinct. It was the foundation of all biological life. The test measured how long it took for that instinct to override social bonds. Marcus chose death in 1.3 seconds, not with resignation or despair, but with absolute certainty. His brain showed no conflict, no struggle. The human had simply calculated that his life was worth less than his children's lives, and accepted that arithmetic with the same ease he might accept that water was wet. "Extract him. Now," Zilrath commanded. "End all testing protocols." But it was too late for her peace of mind. In 6 months of research, she had documented the impossible. Humans had evolved on a death world where 95% of species that ever existed had gone extinct. They had climbed to dominance not through specialized adaptations, but through sheer bloody-minded persistence. Their bodies were weak by galactic standards, but their minds were apocalypse engines. Humans could hold contradictions without breaking. They could experience terror and push through it. They could imagine scenarios that didn't exist and plan for them. They could override their own survival instinct through sheer willpower. They could believe in things they couldn't prove, hope when logic dictated despair, and fight when victory was mathematically impossible. Worse, they could do all of this while remaining functional, even happy. That night, Zilrath composed her report to the concordance. Her appendages shook as she typed the conclusion. Recommend immediate cessation of all invasive human psychology research. Species demonstrates cognitive patterns incompatible with standard neural models. Human mind operates on principles that may be hazardous to observer sanity. Further study risks contaminating research teams with human thought patterns. She marked the facility for decommissioning and prepared to destroy 6 months of data. Some knowledge, she had learned, was too dangerous to preserve. In the observation chamber, Marcus hummed to himself while reading his book. It was a collection of human poetry, words deliberately arranged to evoke emotion, to make the reader feel something that wasn't real. He had tried to explain poetry to Zilrath once, but she had fled the conversation when she realized humans could be moved to tears by carefully ordered symbols on a page. The final transport arrived at dawn. As Zilrath watched her life's work being sealed in radiation containers, she saw Marcus being escorted to the diplomatic shuttle. He waved at her, smiling with that peculiar human expression that showed teeth, a gesture that meant friendliness, inexplicably derived from a primate threat display. She did not wave back. Humanity would join the concordance, she knew. The politicians had already decided. But Zilrath would spend the rest of her life trying to forget what she had seen in those neural scans, the pattern of a mind that had evolved to survive anything, overcome everything, and somehow find joy in the struggle. The humans were coming to the stars, and the galaxy was not ready for what lived inside their heads.